welcome everybody to our sixth Islington Reads. It's hard to believe this is our sixth time getting together over Zoom, believe it or not. Maybe one day we'll actually have a physical in-person book club, but at the moment, Zoom is doing a fabulous job for us, bringing us wonderful authors from all over the globe. And tonight we are very, very lucky and blessed to have Lesley Crewe joining us from Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. So again, we have a pretty close to a record attendance for this Islington Reads. And I just want to let everyone know who's new to it. Islington Reads is a community book club. It is a partnership between Islington United Church and a Novel Spot bookshop. And it is a book club that's open to all ages, genders, and identities. And it's just wonderful to see from when we had our first meeting a year ago to where we are now and how many people from around the community have been zooming in and enjoying these author talks. So welcome everyone tonight. One thing we are going to, I thought we were going to disable the chat during the Lesley's little presentation and then during the questions and answers, and then we were going to re-enable the chat afterwards. But I don't know if that, based on what Cynthia's saying, it sounds like maybe the chat is going to continue to go, but one way or the other, we just want everyone to pay special attention to Lesley tonight as she talks to us about her beautiful, beautiful novel, The Spoon Stealers. But before we get started, I'm just going to do a little bit of an introduction on Lesley. Lesley, as I said to you, lives in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, but she didn't always start there. She was born and raised in Montreal, my old stomping grounds as well. She lived in NDG, she lived in Westmount, she lived in Pierrefonds. She went to Concordia University, where she got an English and an education degree. And then after that, she ended up moving down east, out east, however you want to put it, where she has raised a family. Lesley has written 16 books in total, The Spoon Stealer being the 16th. And the great news about this one, which I know from what I was seeing in the chats and the comments beforehand, how much everyone has loved this book. It won the 2021 Dartmouth Book Award this year. So that's absolutely fantastic. So congratulations, Lesley, on winning that award. I know you've been longlisted and shortlisted for various other ones that you have written. And I met Lesley for the first time. And I've actually got a picture of when Lesley came to a Novel Spot bookshop. And it was back in October of 2018 when her previous novel, The Holden, was just coming out. And that was shortlisted also for the Dartmouth Book Award. Anyway, we have a very, very fantastic author in our midst tonight. So we are very blessed to have Lesley with us. Lesley, based on having read The Spoon Stealer, you all know family is obviously very, very important to Lesley, and the way she portrays family throughout all of her novels, and in particular in The Spoon Stealer, is something very, very special. And one thing that happened in Lesley's life during this whole pandemic is she became a grandmother, and she's got a little granddaughter named Gia. So no, there's a lot of excitement in Lesley's life when she eventually gets to hang out with Gia down the road and once the pandemic is over and done with. So it's very, like I said, it's very exciting. One thing that Lesley did mention to me is, because I asked her if she'd ever taken a writing course because she is such a terrific writer. And she told me she signed up for a 6-week writing course and she was never, ever planning on doing another one again. And Lesley can absolutely write. So we understand why she does not need to take any more writing courses, because she is just an absolutely tremendous, tremendous writer. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the floor over to Lesley, where she can tell us a little bit about the inspiration for The Spoon Stealers, her characters, and various other things. And then I can tell you, we have got lots and lots and lots of questions for you afterwards. So a lot of people want to delve a little bit deeper into some of the characters' lives and the backstory. So like I said, we're very excited to have you here, Lesley. So welcome to Islington Reads. And like I said, we can't wait to hear what you have to say. So welcome.
Oh, wait, no.
Oh, you had it there. If you were unmuted for a second. You're still on mute. There we go. Perfect. Thank you.
How long did you want me to go on? I don't want to blather on for too long. So somebody give me a signal if I'm, yakking too much. I'd rather get to the questions.
Okay, well, you blather a little bit, and then, like I said, we can start jumping in with questions as we go along.
Okay. Well, yes, the spoon stealer. For some reason, this the way it sometimes works with me is I get a little idea, and it kind of just keeps knocking at me. And those are the books that usually end up writing. I mean, there's other ideas I've had that sort of go by the wayside, but for one reason or another, I kept thinking of a character. I kept thinking of Mary Poppins, and I know I mentioned Mary Poppins a couple of times in the book because I wanted this character to have a little bit of magic about her. I wanted her to have a big bag, a carpet bag. That's all I wanted. I wanted her to have some magic. I wanted her to carry this bag. I wanted her to be somebody who was kind. And there's a farmhouse when you drive from Cape Breton to Halifax, halfway across the province. There's a farmhouse, and I just love going. And everybody knows it because everybody I mention this to says, "I know the place." It's a farmhouse it's right here, and there's a hill behind it, and there's two big Clydesdale horses that are always out in the field. There's a big barn, and this woman always has a clothes on the clothesline, and I love that farmhouse. And this is why everybody thinks, oh, why did you pick Pictou? Well, the only reason I did was because this is where this farmhouse is. I didn't know anything about the community. This is where it had to be. I'm hoping that maybe after COVID sometime, I might even go up to their door and, hello, did you know that your house is in a book? The house doesn't look exactly as I described it, but anyway, so I had the scene, I had the kind of the character. I didn't know how to introduce her. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I thought I would have her when she was older, and then we would go back into her childhood. And the one thing, and I knew I wanted her to go to England. I've been to England several times. I've been to Leigh-on-Sea. We have friends there. And I was trying to figure out how I would get her over to England. And then this story of my grandfather and his brothers just kind of came into my mind, and I thought, now this might be a jumping off spot for me to get her overseas. And I didn't really know the whole story about my great uncles. I knew that the two of them died during the First World War. Turns out they died in 1919, one in March and one in December, my poor great grandparents. And then there was this weird story I thought I had heard about their sister going across the ocean to be with the brother who was gassed in the trenches in France and sent to an English hospital. And she went over as a young woman. And when I realized now, she went over during the pandemic. A rural, young woman all by herself. I wouldn't even go to Walmart to go Christmas shopping. There she was, traveling across the world to get to her brother. And unfortunately, he died the night before she got there. And I contacted the one elderly relative that we have left and said, "Is that story true?" And she said, "Yes, that's true." And then I started going through my mother's papers. I knew I wanted to use this. I didn't have to. I didn't have to have all the facts straight, but I wanted the facts straight. So I started going through my mother's papers. I lost her 20 years ago, and I had all the information. I didn't know I had it. And the letter that is in the back of the book I had here, and it describes how Margaret went over to visit Colley's grave, and the other brother, was there, and like, what are the chances of that happening? And the odd thing was, when I started to write it in November of 2019, and I knew I wanted to get it finished before our little granddaughter was born, and she was due in January. So I started November 19th, and I just wrote, and I finished January 15th. And Gia was born January 19th. Because I knew the minute she was born, my focus was going to be somewhere else. So I was on a mission to get this done. Now, little did I know when I finished in January 2020 that suddenly 2 months later in March, we'd be in another pandemic. And so it just struck me as so odd that this came up, in my life. It's almost like I felt like my family had come back to tell me that it was okay, that we'd been through this before. I just can't tell you how spooky it was for me to realize the timing of this. And to read my great uncle's letter, he could have written it yesterday. So 100 years is not a great long time for any of us, really. You sometimes think it is, but it's not for the people. You know, I knew my grandfather, they knew them. You know, so I'm really delighted that people love this story because it is based on my family. But I didn't want the whole thing, obviously. This was just a starting off point. I wanted to get Emmeline over to England. That's how I did it. But she went over to try to get to her brother. And yeah, but I wanted her to be, like I said, I wanted her to be magic. I also wanted, and I've been wanting a long time, because I absolutely adore animals, my favorite thing other than my little granddaughter. I love animals of any kind, always had them, dogs, cats, you know, the whole nine yards. I wanted to write a book where the dog talked. And so I thought, I think this is the book to do it. I didn't know if readers would come with me on this journey, but I figured it was a good choice because when you talk about a character who lives alone, it can get very boring when all you say is Emmeline thought this or Emmeline thought that. She would always have to be with another character to get her thoughts. So to have this dog and to be able for her to have a conversation with her best friend was a way for me to circumvent that. And so it kind of hit two birds with one stone. I was really, really pleased that people went along with it. I called her Vera because I figured after a while people would just think of Vera as Emmeline's best friend. I don't know, you know, all of us who have pets, we all talk to our pets and we all think the pets talk back, and because they do. Nobody listens better than a dog or a cat. And so that's kind of, you know, why I did that. And I'm very pleased. I wish I could do it with all my books, but I guess I better not. But yeah, so that's basically, you know, why I started to write it. I never know, like when I wrote it, I knew it was going to be about a woman who was a bit eccentric and had an odd kind of life and was going to be estranged from her family. But that was as far as I knew when I started writing the book. But that's as usual. All my books, I never know what's going to happen. The characters tell me after a while, after you write enough about them and you get to know them a little better, they will tell you where they want to go and how they want to go. I know at one point, I think when I started, I assumed that I was going to have her go back to Cape Breton and have her life end there. But because the friends that she made in the memoir writing class, which I didn't know she was going to do, became such a big part of her life, I thought they should be included in this journey as well. So that's why she ended up going back to England. Anyway, it's just, and I liked the fact that I've talked to a few people who are English, and said that I did a good job, you know, portraying England and the village and the way people talked and whatnot. And so that made me feel very happy. Gosh, I was going to just tell you something and it went right out of my head. Darn it. But if you want to, you can go on Google and Google Leigh-on-Sea Public Library, and you will see that building. And it does look like an old Victorian building. It's a beautiful little town, Leigh-on-Sea. It's just lovely. But I knew I wanted to be there. I would never write about a place I've never been, because I think audiences are pretty clever. And I believe they know when you haven't been somewhere. And so, yeah, So that's basically all I wanted to do. And like I said, I didn't know what was going to happen to her. If I'd known she was going to be so popular, I wouldn't have killed her off. I might have gotten another book out of her. But and I'm hoping that everybody read this book. I'm just giving everything away. Yeah, so I miss them. This is my favorite book, although I've since written another book, the sequel to Are You Kidding Me? Called I Kid You Not. That's coming out in September. But then I've written another one called Nosy Parker, and that takes place in the 60s in Montreal. And it's a sort of a tribute to my dad. And it's about a 12-year-old, Audrey Parker, who thinks she's a spy. It's completely different from The Spoon Stealer, and that's the way I wanted it. But up until that point, this book, The Spoon Stealer, has been my favorite, because you always have your favorites. And I miss Emmeline and Vera. I miss them a lot. There's some characters that stay with you and others that you can't remember at all. And actually somebody wrote to me the other day and said something about reading. She's reading in one of my books and she's mentioned a scene, and I said, who's Austin? Apparently it was the hero of the book. I couldn't remember. It was because my memories are pretty bad now, so I can't remember everything.
Well, I certainly think I'm going to jump in here talking about characters. I mean, one of the questions that was asked, whether or not you were going to take maybe one of the characters that is in The Spoon Stealer that didn't die, and whether or not you were going to have maybe a follow-up story, maybe one of the ladies that would go back to Nova Scotia to see where Emmeline was and where she grew up, or things like that. So I don't know. Maybe there's still hope that some of these characters are going to come back to life.
Well, actually, they asked me to do if I was interested in doing a prequel, and writing about Prue, and writing about the 15 years that Emmeline and Prue had together. And at that point, I wasn't interested in going back to that. You know, it takes a lot out of you. You know, it's like The Spoon Stealer is it's funny in places, but this was a darker book too. And I find that if I write a book like this, I need to go to something funny the next time. So this is why Nosy Parker was perfect for me. It just, so I've got that out of the way. So you never know, I might, but I really wasn't all that interested in going back to England. Like Crewe was born in 1880. And I'm not a historical writer. So I would feel a little uncomfortable, getting into all that. So I don't know. You never know. But because Vera wouldn't be in it. So what's the point of that?
Well, going back to Vera then, we've had a lot of questions that came in with regards to Vera, and you sort of have answered why Vera was given voice and all the wisdom and the insight. And that's the one thing. I mean, Vera had so much insight, and there was one particular passage on page 61 where Emmeline says, I've got it here, life is nothing but heartache, Vera. And then Vera's answer is true, but then the doorbell chimes. And it's amazing the wisdom that Vera passed along to Emmeline throughout the course and the chattering. But I mean, I know we all speak to our pets, but really, is Vera the alter ego of Emmeline in a way?
Yeah, she's Emmeline's private thoughts. All Emmeline, when I tried to do it, so the questions that every so often I got silly, like saying, well, a dog can't read, like we're spelling words on a sheet. But most of the questions that between the two of them were things that she asked Vera. What do you think I should do? Well, that would be something that you would ask yourself as you're sitting alone in a chair, drinking a cup of tea. What should I do? Like, help me out here. Do you think this is a good idea? So really, she was Emmeline, if you know what I mean. Yeah, she was everything. Vera was everything.
Now, Vera is based on, or you said you had a dog named Marsha. That was.
Oh, Marshy, yes. Well,
Marsha.
that's my my daughter's friend who lives up the road. She has 3 dogs, and one of them is Marshy. I mean, and this dog is such a little character. It's just, as soon as I saw her, I thought, oh my God, this is it. I mean, she's so ugly, she's cute, and she's just a little doll. She's just a ham bone. So it was nice to be able to put a picture, like to have that in my head as I had her, because that was her personality exactly. Yeah, so it was very nice. I have lots of people who ask me to put their pets in my books.
Any of your own pets in books?
They're all in my books as one thing or another.
Okay, so not necessarily as animals.
Some, and I have a lot. All my books have animals in them, and all my love affair with animals is because of them, and the grief when they leave is tough and stuff. And actually, somebody said they never thought about what it would be like for a pet to lose an owner. Like Vera had to leave, Emmeline left her. And I guess that little graveyard scene sort of knocked a few people for a loop. And Vera said she'd be a good dog. And it's so funny, it's so funny when you're writing, you're not aware of, what anybody's going to think of anything. But I had somebody else write to me and say, I love the part where when the doctors told Emmeline that she had heart failure. And Emmeline said, that makes me so sad, because my heart's always been the best thing about me, that my heart is a failure. And a nurse wrote to me and she said, I will never look at that diagnosis on a chart again without thinking of that. When you tell somebody that they have heart failure. And so I can write a sentence like that and not even be aware of how that might make somebody feel. So it's always lovely for a writer to get to hear from readers, what parts of the book sort of stuck with them. Very gratifying.
Wonderful. So why was it important that you made Emmeline an average sort of person, right? She was without any particular flash or pedigree. Like, why did you decide to have Emmeline portrayed that way?
Because that's all of us. I've got a big ass. We're all just normal people. We all think we're nothing special. Okay, that we've got lines on our face and we're just gray. Well, now we all have gray hair, but we're just not all that. And yet, when other people look at us, they don't see the lines, the gray hair, the big rear end, that whatever. They see us. Emmeline was a doll. Emmeline was a beautiful human being. She didn't know she was. I think ordinary needs to be celebrated. I am sick to death of flash, these so-called influencers, these people on the internet that tell you how you're supposed to look and how you're supposed to act and how you're supposed to sit and if I was a young woman today, I think I would shoot myself in the head. I know I'd never survive high school. I don't know how these young people do it. So I just like to celebrate ordinary things. And this is why people like my books. I talk about ordinary people. I talk about ordinary lives. And I just want them to know how special we are. And we don't even know it. It's just the things that happen in every day. Like, think about your life. You get maybe on 1 or 2 hands special events in your whole life. But the rest of your days are filled with just ordinary moments. Just having a cup of tea with your dog, just putting the clothes out on the clothesline, getting to be a grandmother for the first time in 65 years and finding out what that's like. It's just everyday moments that, and those are the moments that when we lose people, all you want is to have like your mother back. All you want is to have your mother on the other end of the phone. I am so jealous of women my age who still have their mothers or their fathers, or whatever. You just want the ordinary things. You want to have a bowl of cereal with them. You don't care about traveling the world and going to Paris and and stuff like that. So when I talk about the things in this book, it resonates with people because our lives are all the same. And I think we pretty much found that out through this pandemic. We're all suffering from the same thing. We're all feeling isolated and lonely. We're all not getting to see our loved ones. We're not hugging people like we were. I never had a book tour this year. It was just the oddest thing, to be usually running around and going to your bookstore and all this. And this year, nothing. And then to even win this award, I was sitting in this room by myself while they Zoom called and said, "Oh, the Spoon Stealer won, congratulations." And I'm here, yay. And I go out to tell my husband, and he's not even here. He went up to the top of the road, and then I called the kids. I said, "Well, I won." And they said, "Won what?" I said, "Well, the award." They said, "What award?" I said, "That's my family. That's how important I am." So that's the only reason. This is why I write. I write for myself, but if people like it, perfect.
Now, Emmeline, is there a person in your family that you're basing Emmeline off of at all? The one person that dispensed all sorts of wisdom and knowledge? Did you have an Emmeline in your life?
Yeah, I've had several, and also, and I have Emmeline's heart. I think most of the characters that I write about. It's so funny. I'll tell you something about me. I've suffered from lots of different things, depression and whatnot, and all throughout my whole life. And a lot of it was because of the loss of our son. And so I've been to a psychiatrist lots of times, like he's helping me over the years and whatnot. And I said to him once, I said, I really don't know who I would have been. I wonder who I would have been if all this hadn't have happened. And he said, read your books. That's who you are. And I teared up because I thought, oh my God, yes, maybe I didn't lose myself for 20 to 30 years. Maybe I do know who I am, and who I am are the people in these books.
Beautiful. Very beautiful. You use a lot of symbolism in your story, in this particular story. The spoons for one part of it, and definitely we've had a question, how did you come up with the title, The Spoon Stealer? The other thing that comes up is aprons, pearls, seem to be very important as well. And then the rug hooking. And then I do have a specific question that gets into the rug hooking later, but why did you particularly choose like the spoons, the aprons, the pearls?
Well, pearls come up a lot in my books, apparently, probably because of my great aunts. So that's always a theme. Aprons I've always loved because my grandmother always wore, about every generation, my grandmother's generation, they lived in aprons. And I just loved, and I love everything about them. So I had to have that. The spoons, actually, I knew as soon as I wrote the scene about the kitten, I knew that was going to be when he said the spoonful of kindness, that spoons were going to be very important to Emmeline, because she remembered that. That was her connection to Teddy. And of course, to be told that he died and then not have his spoon, that he didn't have his spoon, in her mind, it was like, oh my God, there was no one there to save Teddy. He didn't have a spoon. There was no one to give him any kindness. So she got her head wrapped around the fact spoons became terribly important to her. So she would take them. She would just take them. And I also because I didn't want her to be a complete goody two-shoes, but I didn't want her to be a criminal either. I thought, let her have a quirk, and that would be taking spoons. you know, maybe she doesn't realize why she's doing it, but I knew why she was doing it. And I think her friends figured out why she was doing it. And Vera certainly figured out why she was doing it. So, and it was funny because the spoon stealer, I forget what I always have the title first. And I forget, but I had the spoon something. And then somebody asked me at I was asked to a festival, and somebody asked me what I was writing. And I must have said something to them the day before, and she came back and she said, "I'm so excited. Are you going? How long? Or when are you going to start the spoon? You know, that book? It's about stealing spoons. The Spoon Stealer." And I thought, perfect. That's it. The Spoon Stealer. Yeah, I like that. I liked it a whole lot better than the one that I had, so I went with that one. Yeah.
Well, it's a great title, absolutely fabulous title. Now, at the very end, when Emmeline hands over the box of spoons to Louise, do you feel that was kind of a passing of the torch? Because Louise and Emmeline are very similar. And I mean, Emmeline felt Louise was the daughter she never had. So was that something you had planned, or did that just write itself in at the end that she was going to give these spoons?
It just kind of, you know, it just sort of obviously happened. I mean, Louise was somebody that she realized who understood her, and she knew that, yeah, she needed somebody to give those spoons to, and Louise was the obvious choice. I don't think not because you know, they ended up with women in their lives, but just because she was her family, and she felt like a daughter. And also she felt why she got so upset when Louise first came, and she recognized her right away, because Louise was a big girl too. But her mother loved her. And she said, "I don't know why this one loves me, but she does." And of course, Emmeline burst into tears because she never had that with her own mother. She always felt like sort of this outsider. And anyway, so Louise was a lot of things for her. And I'm so glad she had her. I mean, she had lots of people who loved her, but she recognized Louise instantly as someone who would have gone through some of the things. Like, okay, Louise and Emmeline, the same people, brought up by two different mothers. See what can happen? You have a mother who doesn't understand and doesn't want anything to do with you, and then one who does. So the same person can grow up two different ways. But obviously, too, that was very difficult for me, too, to write about that mother-daughter relationship, because I had a wonderful mother-daughter relationship, and I felt very badly. I felt very badly about the relationship that Emmeline had with her mother, but I couldn't. But I knew that Emmeline also needed to save herself as well, and but I didn't know that was going to happen to her mother in this story. I had no plans for that at all, and that just kind of came too. As I said, that story tells me what to do.
All right, now to go on with the symbolism. So this question that came in is the tradition of rug hooking. One of the ladies that wrote in the question, she ended up ordering some rug hooking kits, one for her to do with her mother, and one that she sent to her daughter because they were all doing quarantine time. And she said the humble nature of the fibers, the grounding effect, and the colors and the textures just fed her soul. And so there's a powerful connection, I guess, to this traditional craft. And are you a rug hooker? And why is this craft so important to your story?
Yes, I am a rug hooker. And actually, my very first book, Lexi, the character in it, she hooked rugs, which I had forgotten about. And when I realized it when I was writing it, I said, "Oh gosh, should I have another rug hooker?" But then I thought, well, why not? If you want her to, hook rugs. Well, she not that Emmeline hooked rugs, but to have I forget the character's name, the one who does hook rugs. But anyway, rug hooking is very important to me. I lived in the middle of nowhere here in Cape Breton, a very rural place, but there were two elderly ladies who lived down the end of my lane who were master rug hookers, and they taught me and taught most of the women in our neighborhood. They've since died. But I get a lot of pleasure of memories of Aunt Edie and Aunt Ted, and rug hooking, and I've enjoyed it. And actually, it's true. But I gave it up when I started writing books 15 years ago. And then during the pandemic, then I thought, I'm going to get back to that. And I did. And I did one. And I take it off the wall in the kitchen. As you can see, this study is just filled with pictures. These are family, even some of the family in the book, the great uncles and whatever, are on the back of this wall. But I did a rug hooking of Emmeline and Vera, because that's how important that the book was to me. But yes, I love doing it. And I gave my mother and father, actually, on their 50th wedding anniversary, I rug hooked a picture of our bungalow here. My mom was from Cape Breton, so that's how I ended up here. She would bring me from Montreal every summer. She was a kindergarten teacher, so we would come for 2 months every summer, live on the beach, and we still have our cottage is only 5 minutes down the road. And so anyway, so yeah, so anything important to me, I will rug hook something and give it away. I have rugs here. My husband trips over them. He hates them.
Wonderful. Okay. There's another question that came in about when Annabelle's parents gave Emmeline a generous check to thank her. And she said in the book you put, because people with money think that's what people want. And it's a similar experience with Bertie's brother. So the question is, how did she learn from that and come to terms with offering her loved ones money?
Gosh, I never thought of that. That's true. I think somebody found a bad thing. Actually, probably for Emmeline, it's just actually I had this conversation just 2 days ago. I have a very close friend who just because of her family has a lot of money, and she gives it away. She took me to Paris for a week. We flew first class. She insisted on paying for everything. I let her. Oh, wasn't that generous of me? I let her take me to Paris for a whole week. And she's always doing things like that. And she says, what is the point of having money unless you can give it away? And so for Emmeline, this money wasn't, I mean, she actually did save a lot of money herself because she always lived in somebody else's house. She, never spent anything on herself. So she did have a healthy portfolio herself, I guess. But all of this money was really Prue's money. And for her, it just represented what she was able to do. It wasn't that she wanted to give them money. She just wanted to be able to do something for them, knew that they could take that money and, apply it, whether it be dentures or a house but my most satisfactory moment in that book was when Agatha didn't get a thing.
That was going to be the next question. So they felt it was so out of character for Emmeline to not want to give Agatha anything. So can you do a little bit more about why you did that?
I did that on purpose, and because I wish I was more like Emmeline. See, I tend to be the type of person, I will do everything I can to make sure somebody likes me. Even at 65, I was still, I still, get sort of insecure and whatever, and always trying to make, why don't they like me? And I worry about stuff like that. And Emmeline always wanted to give people the benefit of the doubt. But at some point in your life, you have to realize that it is not your fault, that there are people out there that are not interested in either liking you or wanting to do what you want. They're not worth it. She kept trying and trying and trying and thinking that she had to. And finally it was like, okay, a line is drawn in the sand. This woman, there's nothing I can do for this woman. She's not interested. So I am going to, why am I chasing her around? And she said, I'm not coming to this house again. I don't have the energy to put up with that. So she made a point, and I'm sure it was very hard for her not to put anything in that envelope, but I'm sure she got a laugh out of it too. because that's what I wish that I would do. I wish I would have the balls to do that. I don't know if I would.
So going from a very contentious sort of relationship, we have the Emmeline and Prue. And certainly when Emmeline found Prue, she felt she was home. And home is not always what you expect it to be. How did the writing of that friendship and their story come about? At what point did, I know you had the agency and that's how they met through the agency working, but I think she'd never really had a friend. When they sat and talked that first night, and Emmeline told her whole story that first night in the drawing room. Meg, what point did you decide it was very important for Emmeline to have a very special friendship apart from Vera?
Well, when Emmeline first goes to Prue and she says she felt that she was at home, she was still just Prue's friend. She just felt at home because here was a friend, a close friend that she had never really had a close female friend. She had only brothers and her mother wasn't a friend. So so that's, even if that was as far as it went, that would have been great. And again, I had no intention of that ever happening. But it was finally when I wrote the scene where she met Bertie again, and she said how lonely it made her. I mean, she really did love Bertie, and she never thought of herself as I know she's always felt like an odd girl, always kind of not within the norms. She was always the bigger girl, and she never had a lot of boyfriends. But it wasn't because I thought she was a lesbian then, and I don't even think of her as a lesbian now. I just thought she was just this odd little duck that didn't really fit in with small town. She didn't get married young, she didn't have kids, she didn't have whatever. And I just suddenly thought, it's not fair for her to have not. Yeah, she had Bertie's love, but wasn't satisfying at all. I really wanted her to have someone love her. She gave love to everybody, and I just thought it was natural. It just felt right. It just felt right for those two, and I was so happy that they had, like I said, they had a friendship for 3 years, and then they became a couple. And somebody else asked me, why didn't she tell people? And I keep thinking, think about the time I'm writing in. I'm writing in the 60s, when that she didn't tell, and she didn't tell her two good friends, Mrs.
Tucker.
What's her name? Tucker and Una. She didn't tell them because they are old-fashioned women. They are a different generation. She felt that she could tell, obviously, Louise, not that she knew about Louise, and she could tell the doctor, Marion, the doctor, because she felt they would understand. And she said, let people think that they know you. The people who think they know you, just leave them be. So that's why she picked and chose who she wanted to tell. And I think she wanted to tell the world in a way, because she wrote the memoir. She wanted somebody to know that this is who she really was. And so, yeah.
That twist at the end where she's buried and it's right beside Prue was just that big wow moment for me in the whole story. I did not see that coming at all. So
good.
It was fun when there's that type of wow moment when you're a reader. So
yay! Oh, that's good, because I wasn't sure if people would know, and because that was planned. Yeah, that was planned. I knew that she was going to be in this little village because of Prue. So I was glad that worked out, that we were surprised. Good.
On the research, I know you say you don't like to do a lot of historical research. One of the questions that came in, is it true that Canadian soldiers who died in England, that they normally got buried in civilian cemeteries like Teddy did? Like, I know Jean helped that make it happen for, but is that based on true fact?
Yes, and do you want to know what is really scary? I had a Zoom call with a book club in Calgary, and one of the women was a British lady. And when I told her where my great uncle was buried in, geez, I forget the name of it right now. Anyway, I told her where he was buried, and she said, "Oh my God, I used to live 10 miles from there." And she said, "My cousin lives there. She's just up the road from that cemetery." Anyway, she got in touch with her cousin, and her cousin and her 2 kids took a walk, went to the cemetery, and found my great uncle's grave. Now he was there. It's completely different from the grave is just like there's normal graves, British graves, and then there were 2 rows of these Canadian stones with the maple leaf on it. And these boys were buried there from the local hospital where they had died. Now, I also, like I said in the letter, my husband's aunt, when she was gassed in the trenches, she managed to get home on a hospital ship. So she died here. So some of them, if they were able to get home. But the other ones, I'm sure some soldiers were buried in cemetery, like Army, Navy, cemeteries for the forces. But in this particular little tiny thing, it was just like it looked like there might have been about 12 little Canadian white graves, and they're looked after. They were beautiful. I couldn't believe it. I said, "What are the chances that this woman?" And so they sent me the pictures. I have them on the computer of my great uncle, and I sent them to my relatives. I said, "Oh my God, can you believe this?" And when we were in England, we were there. We were maybe a half an hour from there. If I had known where he was, obviously I would have gone. But yeah, so it's
maybe one day in the future you'll go.
Oh, I hope so. If I ever have the nerve to get on a plane again. I don't know.
Anyway, we're getting close to finishing up the hour, and it's been absolutely wonderful. But there's one thing that came up from a number of people as well. And you say at the very end, and to quote you, "Family stories are the most precious inheritance you can pass down." And the question is, have you written I know this is a very personal novel that you've written, but are you planning on writing your own memoir or your family story at all? I know Sally at the very beginning was mentioning she's trying to do that, write her own memoirs to pass it along to her, leave it for her family. So it's just a matter of that. Something you saying those words, those stories are important. Are you doing it verbally? Are you planning on doing it, actually writing something yourself?
No, I'm actually, the way I'm doing it is I'm putting a little bit in this one. The book Nosy Parker coming out is all about my dad and growing up in Montreal. I'm putting pieces of myself in all my books so that my children, once they have all of them together, they'll know that was my life. That because the death of my son is in the first one. A story that was very important to my mother is in Ava Comes Home. They know the story. I mean, everybody else wouldn't. So all these little pieces of me are everywhere. I don't want to write down. I write diaries too, and that I'll probably throw in the fire someday because, but because I write things like I made meatloaf. Like I write the lousiest diaries. But yeah.
Well, you can keep writing lousy diaries, just keep writing amazing books, because certainly The Spoon Stealer is one absolutely amazing book. So
can I just say I was so touched by when you sent me that link for the sermon. I told my brother-in-law, I said, it's the weirdest thing. The Spoon Stealer is mentioned in this sermon. And when I listened to it, I was so gobsmacked. Well, thank you very much. And now you tell me, because I kept trying to figure out how they were connected. But you say that the bookstore and the church are connected, and that just meant a great deal to me. And I really appreciate it, and thank you so much for that. I really touched me. Thank you.
This is a perfect foray, because actually Maya is actually going to pop up on the screen shortly, and she's just going to say thank you. And everything else, and certainly with tragic that's going on around in Ontario and
Oh.
Canada and everything else, this has been a really wonderful hour to take our minds off of all the tragedies and sadness that we have. So, Lesley, thank you very, very much for joining us this evening. I think at this point in time, Cynthia is going to re-enable the chat so others can put their comments in, but it's been a wonderful evening. We hope you get to see Gia really soon. And spend lots of time. I'm sure there may be even a children's book coming down the pipeline.
Oh my gosh! Look,
Probably doing a children's book. So
well, her mother is Korean, so she has her Korean books and her English books already. She's got this huge library. Oh my God!
So is that now? Did you little Daniel?
That's where the Korean comes from.
There you go. Okay, excellent. That's wonderful. So anyway, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And like now, I will pass it over to Maya.
Thanks, Sarah. Maya, yes.
I'm so glad you listened to the sermon. It makes me so
Gosh, are
happy.
you kidding? It was just thrilling.
Lesley, we like you. We like you a lot. And
Oh.
thank you for blessing us with your story. And now I'm sure people are going to run to the library and the bookstore and want to read the other threads of your life. But thank you tonight for blessing us with your honesty, for giving us Emmeline, for reminding us in this time that a spoonful of kindness is all that we need, and for helping us be reminded that we can find ourselves in books. The breadth of this community and family is strong, and we see that widened in reading your book. For encouraging us tonight to write our own memoirs and to pass that on, and for that profound wisdom of the ordinary moments, and that when we lose people, we'd give anything to have those ordinary moments back. And that is carrying us through this time. And as one who has a dog named Sophie who talks, and that name Sophie means wisdom, I just hold on to that wisdom from Vera tonight, and encourage all of us and you to continue to keep moving through the ordinary moments. In the endings and the beginnings, there is wisdom. So every time you said, oh my God, tonight, it was connected with something that you're like, oh, is it a coincidence? And so I remind all of you that the holy mystery that finds us in stories is carrying us through, and we are part of writing this story in this time. So blessings to everyone for this time of sacredness and for the books to come. Have a great night, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thanks so much, Maya. That was lovely. Thank you.